Welcome in to the latest episode of the Betting the Pitch Formula One podcast. Today we are going over Monaco and, beautiful place. Once upon a time, I did stumble around the city of Monaco. The race was not going on, but I did stumble past a named Monaco Racing Center that I will look up on my phone while Angel is talking. I'm back as always with at Roscoe Poop Scoop on Twitter. If you're not following her yet, make sure you go do so because if you want F1 information, that's where you should be going. She is the expert. She is. Unfortunately, not the one who won her best bet on our last episode, though, as I did get Isaac Hadjar in the top 10. He finished ninth. Very smooth, but made it work. And today, I think we have qualities going on as we're recording. So we might have to do some look at these numbers and bet them later type thing. We do have numbers. I've already written them down for winners of the race, and we'll get into that as always. Best bets coming end of show. At Roscoe Poop Scoop or Angel, how are you doing on this beautiful Friday morning?
It's good. It's a long weekend, so we can watch the race and take an extra day. Just debrief and recap, right?
That's totally true. An extra day to, I guess, work off your hangover from all the Heinekens that they have been advertising all
Oh my
over the place. It
goodness.
seems. So we're gonna go through Monaco. Let's first go through the Emilia Romagna or uh, Imola, I think is what you were referring to it as last episode. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, do so at the real_G Warner on YouTube or Betting the Pitch on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Of course, follow Roscoe Poop Scoop at the real_G Warner across all social media platforms. But let's go with. Your pick was Lando to win the Emilia Romagna. I think based on a value play being second most likely to win, if you thought Oscar Piastri, and Lando are about the same likelihood to win, and so take the bigger one. I certainly agree with that line of thinking. But there's this guy. His name's Max Verstappen. He seems to come out of nowhere, and no one can Verstappen him. Good call to our a longtime listener, Joe Dollar, who came in and said he should never be this price. We should definitely bet him, and I hope that he did. I think that he did, but we'll see, of course. So, if you could, Angel, tell us what you thought of Emilia Romagna, and tell us your thoughts on your former best friend, Lando Norris.
Oh, my former best friend. Four is definitely not my lucky number, even though I love Lewis Hamilton being the 44, number 44. Um, well, so I guess given the information we had, Lando did have a decent chance, and we were going for the value. But in the hindsight, definitely Max was a value pick, right? Being the four, I think a plus 450 last race when we were talking about on the podcast.
Good memory. Yep.
Um
Yep. Joe Dollar
I
got in there. He said max plus 500 to win race in parentheses value play. We had a little bit different price when we were doing it, but yes, it
yeah,
seemed like that value play did come through. Go ahead.
yeah. I think what really surprised me, well, a couple things surprised me, which make the race really exciting. And it was a really fun race, and we compared it with Suzuka, and by all the historical sort of performance on the track across the board and the track characteristics, all that design, it's really similar. But it ended up being a way more exciting race than Suzuka. And we're gonna talk about Suzuka race throughout the season because it was boring, AF. But it was sorry, it was really boring. But what really came through in a couple of things, right? I
Before we
think
get there, so just so everyone's listening, the Suzuka is a
yeah.
Japanese Grand Prix for any of those of you that might be newer to the F1 game. Go
Yeah.
continue.
Thank you. Thank you. We serve as an educational
I
platform
mean,
as
I
well.
got to do something over here, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not certainly bringing the looks to the podcast. So I got to at least be informative or hopefully try to.
Imola, there are
Yeah.
a couple things to take away from that. And I think for one, Red Bull turned around surprisingly. That was really a nice surprise. Well, nice surprise in a way make the race more exciting, but not so nice of a surprise to my current drivers, right?
Well, so Red Bull had two place in the top 10, Tsunoda finishing in 10th. And then Lando, I mean, your pick, as disappointed as you were, he did finish second, so it's not
Yeah.
so bad.
Yeah, thank you. I think during the free practice, we record the race after free practice one, so we had some sort of information from the on-track performance, right? And during the FP1, like Max car still just very underperforming. I mean, he was overachieving and overcome what the car could deliver. And we talk about how important the engineering aspect of the car is was for Imola, which we have another point to bring later. But I think Max Red Bull really turned around after FP1, made a lot adjustment and actually deliver. And it's very frightening when you hear Max saying the car feels nice and comfortable
Ooh.
because that means he's coming back. And I think that really is one key takeaway is it's now even more exciting because we really have a three-way run up on the championship. In the past, we know McLaren has the best car. Lando and Piastri, it's more of their competition. And once in a while, Max bring his amazing race craft and come through and kind of steal the points away. But still, I think truly coming out of Imola, we can be a little bit more confident to say it's a three-way run up on the championship.
Okay, so I'll go over the finishes in the Emilia-Romagna. So we had Max Verstappen winner, Lando Norris second, Oscar Piastri, his McLaren teammate third, Lewis Hamilton fourth, which is I feel like his best showing of the year. Probably got at Roscoe Poop Scoop going. And then we go Albon, Leclerc, Russell, Sainz, Hajar, my pick to finish top 10. Thank you for finishing ninth, just perfect. Sonoda in 10th, and then plenty of others. So, I think we talked about, I mean, certainly Joe Dollar came in as a longtime listener and subscriber to my Patreon, patreon.com/real_G Warner. If you're looking for some baseball winners, it's been a really good month in May and going to try to keep that going as we still have about 8 days left. But with that said, I'm curious I mean, his perspective was always Max Verstappen is a long shot, which 5-1 or 4.5-1, not exactly a long shot, but still, there's definitely some nice plus odds there, essentially. Um, and now you're saying we have a three-team race or three-driver race, I guess two teams. What do you think about, I guess, the long-term? So has Max Verstappen, like, I guess by winning this race, he's done that before. It's not the first race he's won this season. Um, you mentioned that the car is feeling better for Max Verstappen. Does that change how you're feeling about the dominance that McLaren has in terms of just strictly the vehicle?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I have to heads off like to Max, the first turn how he overtook Oscar Piastri. We talk about how narrow the track is for Imola and then it was no one expected anyone overtake at turn one because how narrow that turn is. And he just came out of nowhere and on the side and overtook Oscar Piastri, who was a pole setter, right? I think that just really show, I think all the driver, even after the race, talk about how unexpected that is and how amazing that is, right? So I think all that said, Max sort of ability is superior, I think, in my opinion, than the two McLaren drivers. But with the car coming in, and in the past, when we compare them, is really McLaren the car, Max ability, right? And I think now, a lot of time the car itself is just so important, especially on those narrow tracks and where you quality and you just really rely on the car performance in that one lap. However, now with Max start feeling good in his Red Bull car, at one point I called it a tractor, and certainly it's not anymore.
I
Um,
think his family was listening to the podcast and
right.
they've been noting that Angel's been really dismissive of the Red. I think the Red Bull engineers they put that podcast right in their earbuds right before the race started just to really get an idea of how to build it. So just to bring this to the numbers. I mean, huge difference in prices to win in Monaco compared to the Emilia Romagna. So now Oscar Piastri is still the favorite, but the numbers are much closer. He went from nearly 42% implied probability to win Emilia Romagna to now about 32 and a quarter percent, with Lando Norris pretty close behind him from the Piastri 210 to Lando Norris plus 275. Max Verstappen only 3-1 odds. So it seems like the market is agreeing with Angel that this is pretty much anybody's race at this point. So I'd like to ask you, I guess we can still cover what happened at the Imola, but I'm wondering in terms of you've been pretty consistent. Max Verstappen's the best driver on this tour, but doesn't have the best car. Does the Monaco style? I do have one, of course, listener notes always accepted. Please send them through at the real underscore G Warner across any social media platform. Joe said Monaco is one of the trickiest races on the circuit. How do you react to that? How does that impact the three drivers at the top?
It is one of the most tricky races. We are talking about, I think, the street race, one of the most sort of, when you think about F1 for anyone, people think about Monaco, right? I don't think that there's any other track is more sort of well known than Monaco. But it's one of the classics. The reason it's being tricky, it's a street track, and you see, Griffin, you went there, right? Like
I
I've
did.
never been there. I have yet to gone to gone there, but just by the picture, by the marina, you see by the streets, you see how narrow the streets are. And again, it's a classic one. It's built so long ago. So back then people probably don't have that many cars, so you don't need to build a wider streets. Um, and I think that just give a lot of sort of perspective in how difficult this track is. Um, and again, I think being by the water, it's always kind of interesting to see how the weather change evolves throughout the weekend. That also adds a little bit difficulty. So I mean, I'm there with him. I think how is that translating into this weekend's race? It's probably similar to any other race, right? I think we talk about how difficult each track is in their own way. Um, it's narrow, the same sort of narrowness as compared to Imola. But the slow corner of Monaco is again well known as compared. It's probably one of the most one of the track that with most of the slow corners,
Slow
all the
corners
tracks
because
in
it's
F1.
hard to pass in those corners. So I did actually walk by the Automobile Club de Monaco, and I actually am now looking at some photos. And I was trying to get a selfie, and this woman kept stepping in the way. And then I realized she was doing it, and I turned around, and she like laughed at me. But that's I guess par for the course. It's technically, is it a country or is it it's some there's a different term for it, I believe. But anyway, so yes, I have been there. I mean, it's literally right in the water, and that I guess does bring in a chance of rain. Almost no passing, and rain can come out of nowhere, as what Joe Dollar says. So how do you think that impact? So essentially, I'm guessing that means qualifying is very, very important in this race. Is it the most important to any race than that we're going to cover this season or that we've covered so far?
Um, I guess in the past, I would probably say yes. But again, once we watch the Japanese Suzuka Grand Prix, I don't think that anyone will top any racetrack this season gonna top that one, being the how important the quality was.
Sure.
Um, and I do think one important aspect, I know we move on from Imola, but one
Go
the
back.
other,
Go take us
yeah,
back.
yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
Because it kind of nicely heading into the Monaco is when you look at another key point or key takeaway from Imola is again being such a similar track with Suzuka and really hard to pass, but then end up being so exciting and dynamic on the track, like with all the different movement. It's truly because tire.
Tire
It's a
degradation. Do we have it coming back? It's not sand
Yes,
related this time.
someone take a shot, please. Um, and right. It's actually a low tire drag track. So
Mhm.
surprise like you would actually be more like okay, this one set of tire would last, but Pirelli was cooking. They cooked this like C6 softest soft tire they ever produced.
Okay.
And what that means again is it's more on the tire itself, less on the track being a because the track itself is a low drag track. But the tire is being so soft you wear off really fast. So that being said, that really changed sort of the dynamics on the track during the race day because some of the you have like you have to go back and a lot of people thought this was a one-stop track, but people end up pitting so many times. Obviously, there's safety car create a little bit interesting aspects, and you go get a cheaper in terms of like shorter pit stop, which kind of like jump you up. So there's a lot sort of tire strategy aspects that came into Imola that made it really interesting. And I think in the typical sort of any other season, I would say Monaco, yes, absolutely 90% plus is going to be relying on the quality with a little bit 10%, obviously the safety car and crash and everything come through, like you're going to see a little bit change. But this season, they actually introduced a new regulation for
Okay.
Monaco GP
Okay.
is it's mandatory three different sides of tires, meaning it's a mandatory two pit stops. That being said, I think whenever you have more than one pit stops, you're gonna like when do you pit and what tire do you go on? Do I want bet on the safety car? At which sort of a sting do I want bet safety car? It's all gonna come into your strategy play, right? So yes, it's important sort of where you quality. But I think because historically people just find this type of classic racetrack being a little bit boring because how important your quality is gonna be where you end up on. But I think that's why like Pirelli started bring a lot of this tire difference and to offset sort of the quality position.
Okay.
So
So you said 90%. Joe gave us an 80% number. So it seems like, I mean, not a huge discrepancy there. So qualifying is still very
yeah,
important. This episode is
well I
not
think
this episode is not sponsored by
historically,
Pirelli, but we've already
yeah,
mentioned it a bunch of times. So there's clearly going to be some tire degradation issues, though this is a low tire deg track, is what you're telling me. And so
yeah.
continue, keep going.
So 90%, that was more of a historical.
Okay.
But with the new regulation, I think like I would even go for like 70 or even like,
Okay, so there's gonna be
sort
a
of
lot of
on the,
changes. You heard it here at Roscoe Poop Swoop on Twitter. What you see in qualies is not what you're gonna get in the finishing line. So get ready for some movement, some crashes, some safety car, some impossible passing. And that sounds like if they're looking for that type of thing, it's not really about the vehicle, it's about the driver. So why are we getting off the Max Verstappen train, I wonder?
yeah, there is a little bit car. I agree with you, Max. Again, we can never deny. And whenever I do that, I get punished by my results. Um, And but I think the car because a slow corner and you have to have the high downforce setup. So I think which means you have to lower your car to really sucking in the sort of the pressure like into the ground to give you more of the balance and the stability across the track. So that being said, I think a couple things to again take away from Imola. Mercedes didn't really perform well, right? Like we have one technical issue on Kimi who did not finish DNF, and then George Russell just he qualified pretty high up, but didn't really finish in top five.
Yep,
All
finished
that
seventh. Yep.
yeah. All that said, I think a Mercedes tire sort of the car setup on the pressure on their tire is still need to be improved. Um, so again, going back to Monaco, what we're seeing is the car itself also matters in a way that I don't know if Mercedes gonna improve how they set up the car to really optimize their tire, given this is a two pit stop sort of track. And then I think Red Bull, McLaren, we know they have like McLaren has the best car still, but Red Bull, we know they have a Max Verstappen and their car has improved. I think coming down the list, Ferrari actually surprisingly finished way better than where they qualified last weekend. Me and Joe Dollar even exchanged couple tweet on the Twitter
Ah.
is it's like it's so embarrassing being on Italian, like so close to Ferrari home, but they and the Kimi who is an Italian, three of them in just didn't even get into Q3, right? They didn't even qualify top 10. That's where they end up. But
Well, I want to stop you there because we talked about in the last episode about how Mercedes had moved ahead of Ferrari in the list of teams most likelihood to find a winner, and then pretty much flopped. It seems like is what we're saying. Is that a and it's not a driver thing? That's a Mercedes all of a sudden like as soon as everyone switched to the side of the boat where everyone believed that Mercedes was so much more likely to have a real shot at Imola, leaving Ferrari for dead potentially on the other side of the boat. Well, the side of the boat that everyone was on the Mercedes looks more like the Titanic to me after last week, and Ferrari's just kind of hanging there doing their thing. And this week, it really feels to me like there's a lot more respect for the Ferrari drivers in the market. I mean, the biggest climb to me that I'm looking at is Charles Leclerc down from 40 to 1 to 5 to 1 to win this race. I know you said that it's a lot about where these people are from. Charles Leclerc definitely is rocking a Monaco flag on his profiles, so that certainly helps. I don't know necessarily if the crowd, like a lot of the sports we cover in the Betting Pitch Podcast Network, we talk about home field advantage, and a lot of times it's the crowd giving a bunch more energy to players, soccer players, baseball players, basketball players, whomever it may be. I don't know how much the crowd cheering matters in F1 because I feel like you probably can't hear that much. But what are you thinking about a Ferrari driver in his home race and Charles Leclerc getting all this respect?
well, he did win the race last year. I think that's why, but I just I still think Mercedes has a better car at this point, even though they didn't deliver last weekend.
Than
I think
Ferrari.
for yeah. Um, yeah, Mercedes better than Ferrari. But Ferrari really, what they did well last weekend was a strategy calls, right? And I think that's why I think going into Imola, we thought it's more about the driver ability. It's more about the car engineering aspects. But we really underplayed Pirelli's sort of situation here, and they brought the third element or third factor, right? And I
Sure.
think that same thing carried into Monaco is a strategy calls and the tire aspects that we cannot ignore. Um, and I I think of Ferrari again, we know actually just through all the interview, the driver interviews, we know they still have a long way to go on their car. But I think Charles just he lifted the Monaco curse last year and he won his home race. So I think that's why the market is probably just favoring him a little bit in this sort of
Okay, so
sport.
what's interesting to me is with all the fanfare for how great Ferrari did at Imola, oh my gosh, they finished fourth and sixth. I mean, come on. How far has Ferrari fallen in this world for us to be celebrating that? However, I
I
mean,
know.
at this point, and seeing Charles Leclerc 5 to 1 odds compared to Max Verstappen 3 to 1, yes, it's his home race. Yes, I'm sure he'll know exactly which croissants to get across the Monaco. I don't know. He's probably eating less of those because I imagine driver weight probably impacts the speed of the car a fair amount. But to me, it just seems like there's a lot of love for Charles Leclerc. And Joe actually might be in your DMs or sliding your mentions pretty soon because he thinks that Ferrari will have trouble here based on having to adjust the ride height of their car to work on the Monaco streets. He's looking for matchups to play against the Ferrari drivers, which I feel like if there's any like homing beacon, like beeping sign that says anyone to go against, if you're looking for driver one-to-one matchups potentially, it's to go against Charles Leclerc. Yes, he's in his home principality, I think is what they call it. But at the same time, if he's got a car that doesn't really work for that type of venue, and woohoo, we're so celebrating their fourth and sixth place finishes as a team last week, Charles Leclerc being the sixth place finish. Do you agree with Joe in that sense that Ferrari? Because I know we had talked on this podcast earlier about how they've done a lot to modify their car. Does it just not work here?
Yeah, I think I don't. Can you hear me? Because
Yep, you're
I
good.
lost you for a
Yep,
second
sorry.
earlier. Um, no, I think a Ferrari their car again. I think has a long way to go. I don't. I'm with Joe to be honest. I think um Charles is a little bit overvalued in my opinion on the money line. I think it says plus let me just check
I
really
got
quick.
5 to 1 odds, so it's given him 17 or so percent chance of winning when he was 2.44% at Emilia
Yeah,
Romagna. So clearly moving over a couple states west
yeah,
from
yeah.
in Europe, that's enough to all of a sudden slash these odds for Charles Leclerc. Or really, I mean, come on, he's 6 times more likely to win this race than the last one. I'll take the other side.
Yeah, I and also I think there might be it's just funny. I was reading some sort of the interview notes by Charles. He's like, we cannot expect our car to perform, blah blah, all that. And I guess it's Monaco is such a unique and special race, so we'll maybe that will be make the car sort of unveil some of the performance that we didn't know about. And when the entire strategy of a Ferrari is really pending because Monaco is unique and special, and the car itself magically reviews some performance, I think that's pretty depressing comment. Um,
Or
but
he's setting us up that he's so ready. This is his home race. He's going to wake
yeah,
up in his own bed
or
and he's going to win this race because everyone in the world seems to be betting him to do so.
yeah, or he's just sandbagging it.
Hmm.
But I do think um like the odds haven't been favoring Leclerc just from the results perspective. It's showing plus 500. I think it's overvalued. I do think there is a possible chance he can finish podium if all sort of start lined up for him, but it's pretty he's going up against a uphill battle there.
He certainly is an uphill battle on the streets of Monaco. So let's get into a couple more notes from Joe. He wanted to talk. I mean, forever he's in the Isaac Hadjar camp. I think he might have his poster on his wall, or maybe he just put it on his kids' walls because it's probably a little bit more acceptable in the kids' rooms. But they are still disrespecting Hadjar. He's plus 175 for top 10 again. I'm playing another unit on Hadjar, and that was my best bet last week. So I'm a little bit interested in that too. We had talked on the last podcast about how Imola, Emilia Romagna, was similar to Japan and really involved to me a talented driver needing to be the case. And I mean, we've seen on those both of those tracks because I think he was an eighth place finisher in Japan. So to me, like if we're going similar races here, I mean, who's going to really lap into that field? And that certainly is a nice position to finish top 10 there. I certainly agree with that. If you have any thoughts there, we can do that, or we can get to the classified market, which is always Joe's favorite thing, I think.
No, I think again, Haja just being so consistent. I was even telling my husband last night that when we saw some video, he's just so like such a happy cutie kid, on the track and just like, but when he's like locks in, he locks in like on the track. Um, and like speaking of Haja and Monaco, last year when he was in F2, Formula 2, he was driving for Red Bull. The way the car, the tunnel in Monaco track, and which is very dark and very hard to see, and you don't know what to expect after you turn because then all of a sudden you coming out of tunnel, that brightness of could really shock your sort of vision. And when you drive such a high speed, that's really sort of dangerous, right? So I think last year during the F2 race, one car was slowing down during in the tunnel and right around the corner. So when Haja came through, and it would totally cause a crash if it's like I think if it's a lot of other drivers. But the way he really quickly reacts and quickly picked up and the turn and the maneuver away from that corner, it really shows how sort of the raw talent he has. And I think we're on the same page. Like top 10 is wouldn't be surprising to see as a Karja, and I do agree he's just the market is disrespecting him. He's really has a lot to bring there.
Yeah, no one expected it, but you even get Formula 2 analysis on the Betting the Pitch Formula One podcast here from at Roscoe Poop Scoop. So I guess we'll get to the classifieds before we get and finish this up. Classified market is a great market to attack. Under 17.5 is plus 225. Under 16.5 is 6-1 odds. I'm playing them both. I'm placing a unit. This is Joe's talking. I'm placing a unit on 17.5, nibbling at 16.5. I feel like last week we were a little bit more careful about that. But with Kimmy not finishing, I mean, I feel like he was, let's see, 25-1 odds to win the race, which is one, two, three, four, five, sixth or so to win the race. And if that's car's not finishing, then that's certainly got a good chance. Do you see any more or less likely that there will be less cars finishing this race in Monaco compared to Imola?
Yeah, I think so 17.5 is two not finished, right? And
So that would be so under 17.5 means you need three cars to not finish. And so
okay.
last week it looks like we had Alcon and Kimi Antonelli as the only do not
Yeah,
finish.
yeah, yeah. I think that's possible to be honest. Like obviously two is more likely than a three. But as I was reading sort of about Monaco race, we talk about the tire and the other thing they kind of resurfaced some of the track last year. So the with a newer surface, it would just be a little bit more slippery, right? Which also again just on such a narrow track and such a sort of a fast track, you have like a more slippery area than even past. I think that just adds a little bit more danger, or unknown factor. And just with all the historical race we or historical results on Monaco, there's always sort of almost like 40-50% chance you deploy a safety car, which is mostly due to like either technical issue or crash
Sure.
that
And so
goes.
last week, I think you were pretty spot on where Joe was talking about going crazy all the way down to 16.5. And I think you were a little bit less aggressive with that kind of analogy. And I also want to mention welcome to Gabriel Bortoleto, who joined F1 last week. And he finished in last place of all the cars we finished. So good for him. So let's move to the best bet portion of the show. Of course, we do this every show. I've won my last two, which we're trying to go for three in a row. Angel's going to get back in the winner's circle, though, soon, or maybe find her way to the podium. And if you want to keep following and staying up with the Betting the Pitch podcast, check us out on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify called Betting the Pitch at the real underscore G Warner on YouTube. And I will be doing a better job because soccer season is about to wrap up to get these reels and shorts out on YouTube and on Instagram at the real underscore G Warner. So at Roscoe Poop Scoop, where would you like to go for your best bet on this episode? Keep in mind, I might add some prices later because they were taken down for the qualies.
Yeah, because I guess do we have some other special sort of
So I think top three,
data coming back?
top three, top sixes, top tens, I think are all available. But I don't have
Okay.
any numbers in front of me, so I will update them later as we get, I think probably through qualification.
Yeah, okay. It's FP free practice. Quali is tomorrow
Ah,
morning.
okay, there we go.
Um
Thank you.
yeah, but I think that just adding max, obviously it's more exciting, but it does add a little bit unknown, right? And if we think about sort of the value play, max is currently a little bit higher on the money line against the odds. So that's a one area to look out to. But I do want to say the other thing is William. William has been surprisingly better. Last weekend outperformed Mercedes, and this sort of I mean, if we look at back like 2 or 3 seasons, they're just always finish bottom and coming back this high. And last week they even said they underperform. We didn't talk about this from like Imola on William, but both of the driver finished top 10,
Yep.
and I think Alex Albon is top 5. So um
Correct. Yeah.
in and they even believe that underperform because they didn't make some good strategy calls and all that jazz. But anyway, so I think all that said, I do believe they have a great drivers, they have a solid car, and their team is really learning, improving their own sort of a strategy, sort of decision. All that said, I'm actually gonna go for Alex Albon for top 6.
Okay. Hey, this is Real underscore G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is the F1 episode on the Betting the Pitch Podcast Network. I've won my last two best bets at Roscoe Poop Coops. She's the expert on these episodes. She's going with Alexander Albon to finish top sixth. I'm going to stick with what brought me to the dance last week, and that was Isaac Hadjar finishing top 10. Both should get you to the window, and we'll see you on the next episode as it seems like we're getting kicked off very soon. So have a good one. We'll talk to you all next week or for the next episode, and hopefully we'll have lines available for that one.